course, my name is Sora Amanda Trinity with the Technology Committee, and today I'm here to give you tips on the hot new commodity of the pandemic, presentations. I heard that groan. I even did it myself when it comes to this one, but fret not, I am here to give you some helpful tips when it comes to creating and delivering impactful presentations via PowerPoint. So, what does that mean? What does it mean to have an impactful presentation through design? It really is connecting with your audience to get your point across through your presentation visually. The aim of the presentation really may be to train, to motivate people, to pique attention, ask information, or trigger a conversation. But an effective presentation retains those attendees involved and it keeps their interest in the content of the actual presentation itself. The topic is covered in a detailed manner and it really doesn't overpower the audience in an attempt to achieve too much. So with that, we're going to start with a quote, and that's going to be part of my theme throughout this presentation is a lot of quotes, but they're all effective and they're all relevant. So here we go. So we'll start with this quote that I found online, and it really speaks to the core of today's training. So let's read the sentence together. Design is to design a design to produce a design. I'll say it again. Design is to design a design to produce a design. Now, I know that was a lot, but hang on in there. Because for the teachers in the room, we're going to break this down. So, design, the noun, which is the first one, is the general concept. Design is to design. The verb format of design is an action. So the concept, a general concept, is to design or create a design, back to the noun, which is the concept or a plan or an intention, to produce a design, which is the outcome or result that you're looking for, right? So all that being said, PowerPoint should be clear and consistent and have a clear concept. They should convey the concept with every image and text example that you're using, which is the action. You should plan on how you want to effectively convey your point, which is back to that other plan, that the plan or intention, and then that will result in your desired outcome. So that's how design and PowerPoint are going to work together. So throughout the course of this, you're going to have a few takeaways, and we'll go through them now. The first one we'll talk about is visualizing your data. Recognizing that more is not always necessarily better. Graphics do matter. You knew I was going to throw that in. And then last but not least, we'll talk about the rule of thirds. And then at the end of it, I'll leave a little space for final tips and questions. So in the first section of today, what we're going to talk about is seeing your PowerPoint before you build it out. Visualizing truly what your data is. Oftentimes, we dread the task of creating a presentation. I know I do. What do we put on it? How do we lay it out? Will the audience try to get what I'm even trying to say? There are very important factors to remember here when it really comes to delivering data. But most PowerPoints really tend to be data heavy. And while there are some that may be the exception to having, most in-person presentations and even online presentations really don't require that. People tend to load the slides with a lot of information, and what happens is that people tend to read the slide instead of paying attention to the speaker, or worse, tune out altogether. So with that, I wanna start with a quote, and this comes from a TED Talk person, Gary Lar, and it came to mind when I was trying to get this presentation together. And he says, "What information are you giving in written words that you could really replace with a visual?" So let's take a look at that. So in this example, I've taken a slide from a ritual slide that I had from my undergraduate days. And if we take a look at it, it's trying to convey something. In this case, it's trying to convey what we're going to wear to rituals, right? And if you look at the slide, it's a little bit all over the place. I mean, there is an image, there is text, but the way that it's laid out, it really does not work for what you're trying to convey to the audience. You have a lot of data on here, but it's not organized in a way that really works. So with that, your eye really goes all over the place, right? So what I've done is taken that same slide and simplified it. Pulling back a little bit of the data, having an image that really places your focus on what we're trying to say. What does ritual white look like? What do we wear for ritual white? And having a single image of a single person here allows that to happen. So then on the sides you have your data that flanks it and supports the image in the middle. Okay? So it makes it a little bit easier. It allows your eyes to breathe. It allows you to be able to really read the slide without feeling like you're overwhelmed and seeing too much data on it, right? Now, I do know and understand that I have my people that are like, Amanda, what about numbers? What about text? What do I do with all that stuff? I got you. So here are examples of data-driven slides that you can use as examples. A great way to present data is to visualize them. Instead of adding just numbers and long paragraphs of text, use charts, graphs, infographics, or illustrations to really say what you're trying to say through picture. Because honestly, 9 times out of 10, people are going to stop reading after the first or second line. And you want to make sure that they are getting it in bite-sized chunks. And the way to do that is through charts, tables, and infographics. Now, I understand everybody isn't great at building an infographic from scratch or building a chart from scratch. However, the school of Google, or Google you as I like to put it, when you put that into the search for free PowerPoint presentations or free infographics or free graphics, it's all there for you. Sometimes it does require a registration, but hey, it's less work that you have to do on the back end, and it's a great way to make your PowerPoint look great. I definitely use these, and if you want a specific list that I particularly use or have, feel free to throw it in the chat, throw the question in the chat to remind me of who you are, or you can hit me up via DM, and I'll be more than happy to share that list with you. So, with visualizing data, right? The one concept that we always have to remember is that more is not always better. I'm going to say it again. More is not always better. The best presentation slides are usually the ones that are most simple and straightforward. Not a lot of flashy transitions, no overloaded bullet points, little to no extras like sounds or unnecessary videos. One trick is really to try and use one slide to deliver only one message or point. And that way that'll keep your delivery streamlined and it'll help your audience actually focus on your message. Another added bonus point is that it'll help you eliminate using long text paragraphs altogether. In this way, you can avoid bad presentation design. And the way you do that is KISS. Keep it simple, Sora. Okay? Think of each slide as a visual support, aiding or showing an example of what you're talking about rather than putting the data and text in there. Okay? A good business presentation also includes relevant graphics or charts that instantly illustrate the key message behind whatever it is that you are trying to talk about. Use that green arrow, use that up to the right or check mark to equate success. Like, use different icons and things. And the nice thing about PowerPoint now is that the most recent version, Office 365, it's all built in. So you don't have to go and search for a lot of this stuff. It's already there for you. So in this slide, it's going to be a little bit, but this is what a lot of people's slides tend to look like. Text heavy. Data is everywhere. There's a little bitty picture. I can't even make out what it is. But we want to make sure that we are only using one message per slide, because when this happens, you tend to be all over the place trying to read all of the things and you're not even paying attention to what I'm saying right now. I can guarantee you have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's okay. Just note that in this, we want to make sure our focus is key. Size matters. Proportion is key. The more important the title or content, make sure, hey, that the content is bigger than your title. A lot of people, tend to put the title of the slide up top and then the content is in a really small font. But what's more important? Is it the content that you're trying to get to people, or is it the title? It's okay to break the rules. It's okay to break what PowerPoint has here for you when they lay out your slides individually initially. It's okay. Another thing to note is that white space is important. Negative space. In this example here, as you look through, there's not a lot of white space. It doesn't allow you to breathe and capture all of the points. Again, you're trying to read through everything and then you just get tired and you give up and you stop listening and you stop paying attention. The space creates separation and makes the audience focus on the information that you want to get across. Keep your slides clean. It makes it easier. And even if you have to break it out into multiple slides, so be it, but it just makes sure that you actually do have space for people to actually breathe, read, and understand the concept of what's going on within your slide. Okay? So let's breathe. Take a little time. Okay. Doesn't that feel better? It does. Even though nothing's on this screen, it gives you a little bit of time to brace from what was going on before. So I want to get into the next part and the next topic of this, which is graphics. They do matter. You know, as a designer, I was going to talk about this, and it's one of my pet peeves when it comes to design and PowerPoint is the graphics that people are using. It can be so distracting, and people do not realize how bad graphics really can distract your audience and really take them off course from what you're even trying to say. The one thing that I want you to realize is that, you know, it takes people about 50 milliseconds to form a first impression. And incredibly, about 94% of that comes down to your design. What are you using? How are you engaging your audience? What are you using to make people say, wow? That's the thing that you want to double check and make sure that you are doing, especially when it comes to using supporting images in your design. So I'm going to give you some examples of good image files and good places to find them. Good image files, digital camera images that are large, that have the highest resolution. Honestly, 300 DPI, and DPI is dots per inch. You want to make sure it's a large, high resolution photo. Most people send images or have images that are very small that they've tried to download from Facebook or the internet, and they're not large images. And when they go to expand them, they look grainy, they look blurry and fuzzy, but that's why, because it's not a high resolution image. You also want to use stuff that you can slide, if you have slides or pictures that you can scan yourself, or the downloadable high resolution images known as SVGs, or any kind of vector graphics. Those are what we call scalable vector graphics, and you can make those graphics as large or as small as possible. And I can provide you with a list of those as well after this presentation is over with. But please, it makes life so much easier, and it makes your PowerPoint so much more effective when it comes to actually creating and building the idea that you want for your PowerPoint. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of the bad stuff. So as you can see, screen captures of images on the web, they're usually only 72 DPI. They're pretty low res or super tiny files. And those top files look like the frog here, where they have a really weird white background. They have all this really weird stuff going on back on the back of it. And then last but not least, you have your watermarked images. This is one of those ones that I just want to reinforce. Do not use watermarked images in your presentations. It's distracting and it doesn't look professional. So make sure that you are doing that. You're looking out for those white little lines in the pictures or the checkerboard or whatever's there. Make sure, because those are watermarked images, which are images that you need to pay for. They are not yours. They are watermarked. So be careful when you are selecting images from off of Google. I'm not downplaying Google. I do it all the time, but just make sure that you're checking the sources and the images that you're using. Okay? The other things just to note, use the pictures, don't let them use you. Remember, your pictures are your support to your actual text. Keep your slides simple. Too much attention diverts away from content, and too many pictures also can make a presentation, when you're saving a presentation, very difficult. Just because of the file size. So just make sure that you're using them in moderation, but using them when they need to be used or reinforce a point that you're trying to make. And the other thing here is just to make sure that you are going through And just really, if you need to know how to find copyrighted images, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to go through that portion of it with you as well. All right. So the last part of this that we'll touch on is called the rule of thirds. So what is the rule of thirds? It's honestly a practice that I use a lot in design and photography, but it's also something that's very well placed within PowerPoint as well. The rule of thirds is a composition guideline that places your subject in the left or right third of an image, leaving the other two thirds open. So right now I'm like dead center in camera. If I were to move to the right or to the left, that would be considered part using the rule of thirds. So it's really about composition and making compelling design and well composed PowerPoints or shots in my case based on that rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is really a guideline that suggests placing key graphic elements along lines which divide your image into thirds or at intersections of those lines. And together they divide your image into 9 equal areas. And these lines intersect at 4 points known as PowerPoints. And I'm not just making that up, that's actually a true statement. So the rule of thirds is a guideline for composition that suggests placing those graphic elements along the lines which divide your image into thirds or at the intersection of those lines. So what does that mean? I'm glad you asked. So imagine if your PowerPoint slide is divided both vertically and horizontally into thirds like this. Now, at each intersection are your PowerPoints, right? And these are the hot points of where you want to either place image, place text to make it the most visually pleasing to the eye. And how can you apply these rule of thirds to your PowerPoint slides? Glad you asked. So look for photos that obey the rule of thirds. If you're looking for photos that bleed to the right or bleed to the left, which means either they're placed or they're more heavily weighted or placed on the right or left, those are really great photos. If you don't have a photo like that, like let's say you have a photo where the person is dead center, but you have all of this stuff going on or you have all of this space around them, you can actually scale or crop an image with PowerPoint to make it apply to the rule of thirds as well. It's really nice and it's really easy because you can do it right within apps. So you don't have to go to Photoshop or Canva or anything like that to do that. You can actually do it right from within within PowerPoint itself. The other thing to do is that you can also combine those images with text so that obeys the rule of thirds. And 2 great ways to do that is to take large uniform areas of color, or if you have like a wooden background or a painted background, moving that and using complementary colors in your text to really pop from that background. So I'll actually show you an example of this in the next slide here. So as you're looking here, we can see women in the workplace and we have the image that's dead center and it's a cute slide. But how did we make that more effective? We move the image off to the side, then we put text in at the top for the title of it, Women in the Workplace, that complements the photo. And then you have your subline, which is the tips at the bottom in a subtext, which still allows you to see it, but you know that it's subtext and the main focus of the slide is the woman with the boxing gloves and woman in the woman in the workplace title. Make sense? It's a really cool concept and it's just something to think about, especially when you are crafting your slides and whatnot. So now it's time for a few quick tips and tricks that I use constantly and consistently. So one of the things that I do want to let you know, something will go wrong. Test your presentation before you show it. Always have a backup of your presentation, be it online, in Google Slides, Canva. Make sure you have a backup copy of this. Make sure you're talking to your audience, not just the slides. So if you're seeing me do this, that's not really a great way. You don't want to see the top of my head throughout the whole thing. Look at your camera. And if you have to read notes, it's okay to glance down and then look back at your camera. Don't read just what's on the slide. We can read that, use a visual presentation as a starting point, but what you have to say is what matters. Avoid apologizing for a presentation shortcomings. Press on. Leave time for Q&A. Check your grammar. I am a grammar violator, so I have to triple check for it. And also, if you can't avoid it, don't make too many slides, because when you have 50 slides and people are just like, okay, girl, I need you to speed this up. It's time. I need to go. And then just remember, out of all of this, keep it simple. It really is just a tool for you to deliver the message that you need to get across to your audience. So just as we started with the quote, we'll also end with a quote. And if companies would have as little respect for business as they have for presentations, the majority would go bankrupt. Remember, your presentation really is what matters. Thank you all again for taking the time out today to listen to me talk about things that I love, mainly presentations and graphics. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat or hit me up personally. I will be more than happy to walk you through. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.